Hello, everyone. I'm Hector Del Castillo, organizer of ProductCamp DC and founder of Bold PM. I'd like to welcome all of you to today's discussion. And it is my pleasure to introduce today's speaker. Grant Hunter is a partner and COO of Product Growth Leaders. And his topic today is how to create your value proposition and using a tool, which is going to talk about, which is a value proposition map. So that's going to be the today's discussion, and there'll be Q&A. So make sure to submit your questions via the chat, and we'll make sure that we can either ask them as we go or wait until the Q&A portion before we wrap up today's discussion. So Grant, welcome, and how are you doing today?
I'm great, Hector. Thank you for having me.
All right, let me stop sharing, and you can begin your presentation.
All right. Again, thank you to Hector and ProductCamp DC for having me to talk about creating your own value prop map. It was interesting, Hector. You were talking about some stuff. If people are using your product off use case, right? Something you're not expecting. It partly is a value prop problem, but it's also an innovation opportunity. Peter Drucker, and as you know, I'm the Drucker Fellow at Product Growth Leaders, as Steve will call it. Peter Drucker actually said that's one of the top places to find new innovation opportunities. Often customers will be trying to solve their own problem and find your solution, even though it's off brand, and use it. So sometimes that's a great place to find new places to go with your product, new markets, new personas, new use cases. So it may not being used the way the value prop was there, but it's actually a really great tool for finding those other options. When you talked about that, I wanted to get that in because I think that's an incredible lesson for people to think about. Don't think about the fact that they aren't what you thought. Ask them how they found your product and why they're using it, because you can find new use cases. With that said, let's get back to value props. And I was thinking during the intro about a movie called The Hudsucker Proxy. If you haven't seen it, it's Tim Robbins, Paul Newman, and Tim Robbins' character is at a toy company, and he had an idea. It's a circle for kids. And it was a joke through the movie, but what he invented was the hula hoop. And so what's the value prop? Kids can play with it for a long time, but if you don't put it in the terms of the value prop, you tell it as the product, it's a circle for kids, right? If you flip it and start talking about the value prop, now you can get into why a circle for kids is going to be something valuable. Popped into my head. I just wanted to share that. With that said, let's get started. And first things first, value props are a critical part of strategic positioning. And I use that adjective on purpose, strategic. Too often, positioning is viewed as a tactical and more messaging than true positioning. But in product management, positioning needs to be strategic. You do it from the start. It's part of building your business case. And to put that point in place, let's start from the beginning. Your product is a solution to a problem in the market, including all the components needed to solve it. And our positioning is about letting our company and the market know specifically who we are targeting the product at, what value the customers will get from it, and why us. What's our unique differentiation? In her book, obviously awesome, April Dunford defined 4 keys for positioning. Defining unique attributes, the value or benefit your offering enables, who cares a lot, so what are the characteristics of the ideal customer, and the market category for the frame of reference. The value you create, this is where both the market category and value aspects of April come together, as it's all about solving a problem. The category is high-level problem. It's legal software, April, right? That's where we may be. While your value may be a specific flavor of that problem, we're solving it for a specific segment, which leads us to who wants that value. Who are the customers that share a similar value profile and have the problem you solve, right? And those are where the customers who want your value are. And the final one is, and I don't know why it was a build there, still working on the deck, unique differentiation. What is your competitive advantage? On what attributes do you outperform your competitors in alternative solutions? This is not product market fit. It's product market differentiation fit. You want to get all 3 of those aligned. And positioning is key because it helps inform the whole organization. It helps you inform the business leadership as to why are we doing this and why we expect to win. The development and delivery organization, so they have a better understanding of what they're building and for whom. And for sales and marketing, so marketing can leverage the positioning to create messaging and campaigns, and we can enable sales with qualification questions and key talking points to help them win deals. One of the most common frameworks for positioning comes from Regis McKenna, marketing guru, also was talked about a lot by Jeffrey Moore in Crossing the Chasm. He had worked with Regis McKenna. In this format, it's really a Mad Lib fill in the blanks approach. And too often people just do it as that. They put whatever words are in there. They don't put any thinking behind the words. For a target customer whose statement of need or opportunity, the product name is a product category, that statement of key belief, of key benefit, a compelling reason to buy. Unlike primary competitive alternative or approach, our product statement of primary differentiation. While it covers a lot of the key components that April talked about, who wants the value you create, your differentiation, unfortunately, too many people do not put the work in to do it right. And it ends up looking like this. For everyone who has a need for my product, our product is a widget that makes your life better. Unlike all of those other widgets, our product leverages visionary technology and best-in-class service. And when this is your positioning statement, you end up with messages like this. Now, this is true. This was positioning statement that caught our eye from a press release from a competitor of a client. We shared it with them and we all had a laugh, but this new software powerhouse will blend visionary technology and best-in-class service to close all gaps in the planning process, offering the most complete full-service solution for customers of all sizes. The thing is, this could work for our client and all their competitors. And if your positioning statement, if your messaging could work for all your competitors, you're doing it wrong, right? Our goal is to have a statement that is separating us from the differentiation, showing the value, making sure we talk to the right market, but also showing our differentiation. So we actually don't think it should be a positioning statement. We think it should be a positioning book with 3 key components. And we've talked about those components. The value you create. So this is where both the market category and value aspects of April's come together. And it's about solving a problem. High-level problem, legal software, where your value may be specific. Who wants that value? And your unique differentiation. And these are the 3 core components of your strategic positioning book. It may not be on one page. Each of them may be a page. And what you need to understand is the worse these 3 are aligned, the weaker the alignment is, the weaker your strategic positioning is and your opportunity is. And of course, the better the alignment of these 3, the stronger your strategic positioning is. You see, the alignment of product market is great, but if you cannot differentiate from competitors, if that third circle is not aligned, or worse yet, if a competitor has more differentiation in the product and market, your strategic position is limited. Some other aspects that you could add to your positioning book could be things like problem statements, your use cases, your supporting quotes from customer interviews, information on ROI you may have, and case studies. These are all great things to fill out context. I think that sharing the problem stories and problem statements you write for development design as part of the positioning really helps the marketing people understand the use cases and better represent them in going on. What I'd like to do is sort of ask the question, how well aligned are the value you create? Who wants that value and unique differentiation? Deepro, I'd love to go to you. How well aligned are those for you?
Somewhat, I would say. At this point, we do have some struggle around because we have an enterprise product and a regular product, so we have a little bit of that common ground. So that's kind of what we're trying to clearly delineate. But I think we're pretty good on the who wins the value part and what the unique differentiation we have. So
where do you need to do the most work, do you think?
We need to do the most work on differentiating from our sister product, honestly. And the other
inside your own company, and that's a common problem as you get to enterprise products where there may be overlapping products going after a similar market.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And that's also where we need to have the positioning right in terms of, if you are this, then we have product A for if you're this, and if we have product B if you are that. So I think that
really getting down to the who wants that value, the segmentation and personas. If this is your situation and these are what your problems look like, go with product A. If this is what it is, go with product B.
Exactly. Yep.
And that's if you've got multiple products that sort of compete, that's critical to have that differentiation defined as well as your value prop.
Yep, I agree.
Pardon me. Elisa, how about you? How well, when you, in your products, do you think you have the value, you understand the value you create, who wants that value, and your unique differentiation?
I think we still are working on that. The other interesting part for me is that kind of my product is embedded in other products.
Okay.
So it's kind of part of a larger product that is what is being sold. So it's not kind of just an individual piece. And we have also different users that may come to use a product for different reasons and will have different needs. And we have to try to find a way to meet them at their technical level, each of them, because they all come from different technical skills. So I think we still have to work more on aligning all this.
You talk about being a component of a larger solution, or sometimes it's an internal product. You still need to have your value prop down for those types of things. There's a business case. There's a reason why they have your product, even if it's a component of something else, and being able to clearly define that and write where the value creates. And it may be that it's creating value for everybody who uses this product, but here's where it creates the value. Here's what our differentiation with that is. And same with internal. So often new products are built for an internal audience and they never get used because people don't understand why they should use it and what the value is. And regardless if it's an external product for a client or an internal product for a customer or a component of a platform, in each of those cases, it's important to have that strategic positioning and business case done to understand why. Because if you can't articulate that, maybe we shouldn't be doing it. And that sort of goes into where strategy comes back. Hector, any thoughts on this before we move forward?
Yes. So I think that is the more stakeholders that are using your product, the harder it is, because you have to do your homework to really understand what value is, because when you really break down users versus the buyers, and you need to satisfy both. There may be different segments of users and also different segments of buyers, and they all have a different idea of what value they perceive from your product. And I think that if you don't sample enough, or you don't have access to enough of those stakeholders that are current users, current buyers of your product, as a product manager, you're going to be struggling, because that's where the work is trying to really understand from the users and from the customer's perspective, what would make that experience much better than it is currently? And how is the experience that you're delivering right now, from their point of view, is it really different from competing products that they also have access to? And that is usually sometimes the challenge for product managers, because if you really start looking at that, it's typically, so in some cases it's considered, well, it's market research you have to do. In some cases, product management doesn't do market research. It just depends on the culture within your organization. And then yet other people will say, well, it's more of a product marketing activity to be doing that work, right?
Yep.
And I find that often when there's confusion about who's responsible for doing it, then usually it doesn't get done at all, right? It comes down to everything that all decisions are being made based on somebody's perspective, and that's not necessarily the buyer or the users of the product. It can be an executive, it could be the top person that is in product management, and just relying on their own experience as opposed to actually doing the work that is needed to really understand this. And I think that really hits a lot of B2B products.
Yeah. And that's what sort of this slide was talking about. And me looking at this now, I should probably create an outside one. If this is sales and marketing, this is development, and this is our financial or business stakeholders, the real audience, and maybe I need to find a way to put it, is the market themselves. And to your point, and Steve had said something in the chat about it, understanding your segments and personas is so critical to do this. There's a book called Grassroots Strategy out that was written by some friends of mine. They share a mentor, my business school professor from Penn State, and they used his definition of a market segment. A segment is a group of customers who share a similar problem and a similar value the same things, right? So what we're looking at when we segment is people who share a similar value profile, or they value the same attributes that we might, whether it's craftsmanship or local or sustainable, or I want the brand, the brand leader, right? And so it's really understanding what those things are. And you may have the same product that's going after multiple personas or segments, and you may have to tweak that positioning and value prop based on that. So awesome. Well, with that said, let's get back to what we were talking about, and more specifically the value prop and the value you create. And so, we're going to cut to the point on value. Your customer does not buy your product. They buy the value your product delivers. Theodore Levitt, in his HBR article, Marketing Myopia, famously said, people don't want a 1/4-inch drill. They want a 1/4-inch hole. And some take it even further, and I actually agree with them, that what are they doing with that 1/4-inch hole? What will the 1/4-inch hole enable? The outcome to build a desk or hang a picture. Peter Drucker called these wants and needs and said a product should address an unmet or undermet need that customers have. It could also be market problems or jobs to be done. But our job with the product is not to be defining what we sell, but it's to be defining the outcome the customer is looking for, the solution to the problem. And that's the value they deliver. We deliver the value of them buying our product, of solving the problem for them. And the reality is customers buy on price only because they can't find extraordinary quality, convenience, service, and value. It is product management's job and product marketing's job to focus on your differentiation, be it quality, convenience, service, or something else, and the value you deliver to the customer. And so let's dig into those two aspects, the differentiation, or more so the value, right? As you look at value, it's key for us to look at perceived value with an emphasis on perceived. This is what matters. It's the perception of the customer in the market. And it's the key to all of your pricing. It doesn't matter what you think of the value of your product. It matters what the customer thinks. Back to Peter Drucker, only the customer can answer the question of what they value. And we have to be talking with them and engaging with them and doing that, invalidating that as we go along. I think Hector had mentioned that as well. And if you think of these two, differentiation and value, we created the value differentiation pricing matrix with value, specifically perceived value on one axis, and differentiation, again, perceived differentiation on the other axis. The less value and the less differentiation a persona or segment perceives, the lower your price should be. And the more value and differentiation they perceive, the higher your price can be. So this gives us a whole area to think about. Where do they perceive the value? Where do they perceive a differentiation? And with that in mind, doesn't matter what it costs us to do this, right? Or what other business issues we may have. Those are irrelevant to the buyer, right? It's that they care about the value for them, not the cost for us. And it always gets back in doing a business case to how do we make sure we understand what they value and then make a decision of can we do it profitably, right? They don't care about our costs. They care about their value and our differentiation. And if they don't value it, it's irrelevant. But this gives you a nice little tool to start thinking about where your perception is. If you can get the perceived value high and the perceived differentiation high, you're playing in an Apple space, right? The iPhone, people lining up to get the latest iPhone or the new computers and monitors they have. And that's the type of stuff we need to think about. Is that's why they're so successful. They're living in that upper right-hand corner because the perceived value that their customers have and the perceived differentiation their customers see in their products. So just a quick thing to think about. And the better you can understand the customer value, the better you can communicate it. And you can actually create tools to help people understand your value prop. My energy company has multiple programs to incentivize efficient use of energy, from rebates for new appliances and HVAC units to discounts on LED lights and other energy efficient products. Their goal is to enable energy efficiency in the customers, and they help you track it. Each month I get an email. This is a screenshot telling me how my energy units have been used as compared to the competitor or to my neighbors. And it gives me a great ability to understand how efficient I am. And actually, the value prop may be as much for the HVAC company that put in a high efficiency unit for me as it may be for the Pico. But being able to quantify the value that you're getting in these types of things is an amazing tool that we get to leverage when we're doing value prop stuff. So let's talk about, where does value come from? Value can be functional things like, do you increase their revenue or decrease their costs? Save them time, minimize their risks, improve their experience, or something else that's functional to them? If the answer is yes, measure it, share it with them, use it as a key indicator for your product. These also could be social or emotional things, like helping you achieve status you seek, reducing anxiety, providing peace of mind, reducing uncertainty, or helping them feel like they're making a difference. Bob Muesta, one of Clayton Christensen's research partners, who's part of the milkshake story, if you know that, wrote a book on sales that I found incredibly valuable. And he talked about how it's functional, emotional, and social, the things that you should be thinking about in the value of a jobs to be done. And so I believe we need to think about these things. I've got a client I worked with doing the same exercise we're about to talk about, who they do IT services. They're high touch, high value. Their customers love them. One customer said they wanted to put a statue of one of their consultants in front of the building because they saved them so much time and money. And what they found, in what we've named some of their features in their, when we productize their services, was certainty guaranteed. That was upfront discovery stuff to make sure that they're certain of their decision of what they need to do. And peace of mind guaranteed, which was in the project management while it's going on, we have peace of mind that we know what's going on. There's no surprises coming. These are great little places we can think about, not just the functional costs, saving costs, raising revenues, but these emotional, social status things we can get. And so the core components for the value proposition is understanding the problem or problems being solved, including the problems they need to solve during their buying process, and being able to define the pains they can avoid if they solve that problem, be they functional, social, or emotional, and the gains they could gain if they solve that problem. Again, functional, social, or emotional. And so what we did, Steve and I'm going to give you a little bigger view of this, is the value prop map. It takes some inspiration from some stuff we did before at Pragmatic Marketing and the problem-oriented features, as well as from the value prop canvas from Strategizer, but we put it in a form that we think works better. My clients are saying that. You start at the top with your problems. You can have one problem defined, or you can identify within this idea or theme of problem, what are the problems we have? What are the pains and what are the gains? And so what you do in an exercise, this is a great exercise that can be done in Miro, that's where we do it with a lot of our clients, or if you're in person, you can simply draw these boxes on a whiteboard, right? And use Post-it notes. And I like to use a different color for each person. Each person gets their own color. And put the Post-it notes up. Take 15, 20 minutes and say, okay, write down the core problems being addressed by the product or the feature or release. And people can put them there. Write down the pains from the problem and the decision to change, right? And then the same with the gains. And all of a sudden, we end up with a whole bunch of Post-it notes. And this is where the fun part or hard part comes in. We start organizing the pains and gains by theme. And these become our value themes. And with these, we start identifying what are the critical pains and gains that we want to be talking about when we do a value prop. Hector, we will get you a copy of this template so you could post it with us when you post everything else, okay?
Sounds great. Thank you.
Awesome. And so we organize these pains and gains by theme, right? But we also can organize the problems by theme, and those become our features, right? And so as you do this type of stuff, we can now start looking at what are the pains and gains we're getting, what are the problems we're solving, or the features, the thematic features, and actually start mapping them. And now instead of doing a feature benefit thing for our marketing people, they've got a map of what's the value we're creating and how does that tie back to the problems we're solving. And so this is just a unique way to start thinking about how do we do this type of stuff to put it together. I'd like to, any questions on this approach and how we're talking about it here?
So one of the questions I have regarding this, and I actually have used the value proposition canvas from Strategizer.
Yep.
What I like about it is that I can build a specific value proposition for a specific type of user or customer.
Yep.
And I really create not one, but multiple canvases that I'm using because each canvas is for a specific type of user or for a specific type of buyer.
Yep.
How would you use this in this case in that way? Because, I don't see a place where I can keep track of my specific user type or specific customer type.
I would think you would be able to do one of these for each. And maybe what we need to do is put a field on there just saying, who's the persona and segment you're targeting with this one.
I think so, because that's what I like about the Strategizer canvas is that I can keep track of what is my user type or buyer type, because I'm typically in B2B products, you've got to do it for everyone that is a user or a buyer and have clarity as to what are the preferences and the likes and dislikes of each when they all have the same need.
Yeah. No, I completely and totally agree. And I love that idea. It's something we'll figure out how we put it in. I'll have to go look back at their map and see how they're doing it. Awesome. Any other thoughts? All right. Let me see if I can figure this out. I want to show you guys, and this may be easier to do as a screen share. We did one of these with a client and share screen. And this is sort of what it ended up with. So we had all these things, but this is for a release they had. And they were identified that the core problems were around reporting. They were solving around parent engagement. And this was a software that helps run pre-K businesses. Access outside of Windows, their legacy platform was Windows based. Then virtual attendance. This is sort of dealing with the virtual school in the pandemic. They found that the pains and gains themes they were seeing were frustration, uncertainty, lack of trust and fear, ongoing monitor and school readiness, and efficiency and productivity. And they were able to then map each of the features based on the problems back to what which ones were solving which problems. And normally it's not a one-to-one. It's a many-to-many. And so this is just just to give a quick example of how we were able to do that with the client. With that said, that's, helping you guys see how to do that. Was the key goal for this. And I was going to, have us open it up to questions, Hector.
Sure. One thing that I wanted to ask Grant is, do you have any examples you showed us examples of value propositions that are not very good.
Yep.
Do you have an example of a really strong value proposition statement?
For me, as I said earlier, I don't think that it's a statement. I think it's a book. So if you're doing strategic positioning, it's a whole bunch of things.
Yes.
And your differentiation is not a statement of differentiation. It may be using Aspire. I don't know if Steve's done Aspire in here to start cataloging where you have differentiation compared to your competitors. You could do the positioning. I like to use a 2x2 matrix, but how do you start identifying where are those areas, what are the attributes you can do it with? And so I've got a 2x2 matrix I use. And then the value prop, I tend to use use this exercise instead of to create a value prop message. That's something marketing and copywriters are good at, to give them the themes they should be thinking about, right? I don't want to write the copy. I'm not a copy person. Marketing people are better at that. Maybe product marketing people. But if I can help them understand the pains and gains with some examples right through those Post-it note use cases, and then how those map to the problems we're solving or the features we have, to me, that finished product I just shared there is what we shared with marketing. And it actually, we like to have marketing participate in that exercise when doing the value prop map.
Okay. So, one of the things that I think is good to know, to also understand is, what's involved in, from a user's point of view in getting the product, number one, delivered, right? Because getting it in the hands, it may be a product that you're not necessarily going to a store or a typical retail location to grab, especially software products. So how do you get access to it? Define that very clearly, but then also how much time is required for installation, like setting it up, right? And then, going through like the type of statements that you would have to say, why is our product much easier to install and set up compared to some other competing product kind of thing. But my point is that if you're putting together a book, I think it goes well that you need to say, okay, where is the most customers going to buy it first?
Yep.
And is fulfillment going to be immediate, or are they going to have to wait somehow because something needs to get delivered and get set up before, right? Yep. Kind of like the IKEA model. People that buy IKEA know that, you're not necessarily going to have instant gratification because you have to first go to the store, or even if you get it delivered, it's in a box, and now you have to assemble it before you can actually use, right?
Yeah. And that's because they've really done a good job of defining their differentiation is in the cost and style, because they've got the Scandinavian style, but it's the cost, but that comes with the trade-off of you have to put it together, right?
Yes.
And you have to carry it in your minivan or truck or on top of your car to get it home instead of having the furniture be delivered. And so that all comes back to the strategic positioning and being able to understand what it is. And I probably sped past it, but we had a slide where we talked about a product as a solution to a problem. The reality is it's the whole complete solution. To your point, it's all aspects of the buying process, the experience with buying, the ease of use of getting it up, and so understanding that whole product. And that's definitely something that should be put into that strategic positioning book. Is what is the whole product, or per persona, what is the whole product? Because some people may buy, some people may say, I'm going to buy IKEA online and have it delivered to my house and hire somebody to assemble it for me. And now I have it. They cared more about the style. You may have different personas that have different needs, and the value prop may be different. For them, the value prop is it's still pretty cheap and it's got the cool Scandinavian look. And for a 20-something who's doing an apartment, that's great. I'm not busy. I was listening to Good Strategy, Bad Strategy on my way to my meeting today. And, he really hit the nail on the head talking about understanding, the whole aspect of stuff of what people are buying and that type of stuff. I had a client once who lived in Manhattan, and we used to make, Fresh Direct as a food delivery in Manhattan. And we were talking about how, delivery, the problem Fresh Direct solved for her was not that I didn't have time to go shopping, which is a lot of what people used to talk about. The problem Fresh Direct solved for her is she didn't have a car to put all the groceries in. And right, it's understanding that problem that we need to get to.
Yeah, and that's what I'm thinking about, is that there are different levels of any product, right? And what I find is that, especially right now in software products and product-led growth being a huge drive, most people think that all you need to do is just have some sort of subscription model and then a self-help portal, and that's enough for everybody. And I'm going like, that is so wrong, because I find myself that is, that the product managers or people who are putting together this product that maybe, requires some sort of self-registration process, so you can log in, sign up, and then very quickly get access to like a free version of the product, which is very limited. And often it doesn't allow you to really get the full benefit of that. And then you find out, well, you really need to turn on a paid plan. And then you turn on the paid plan, and then you find that that specific use case that you really were looking at is not really fully supported. And worse, whenever it seems like, something isn't working the way that you're expecting it to work as a user, the way that I'm expecting it to use as a user, when I try to get help, then I'm dealing with a chat bot.
Yeah,
not a live person.
I'm going to completely openly admit I'm a B2B person and more enterprise B2B than SMB. And I just posted a link in the chat to an article on Qualtrics versus SurveyMonkey, because SurveyMonkey was an early on product-led growth, get it for free, move up. In Qualtrics, understanding value props, because they understood the value prop was different for the CEO than it was for the C-suite and then for the typical person, just blew them away in valuation. And there's going to be times where I think product-led, so half of what people talk about when they're talking about product-led growth is just being, the product-led part. Really, part of the product-led part is it's product management that's being market-focused, which help us make sure we understand the personas and their problems and we're solving them. The other part is this, I've got a client who calls it freemium cheapium, right? How do we find a way to get people using it? And I believe in a B2B enterprise environment, the Slack or the Zoom is the fringe case that a handful of people were successful at doing it versus everybody should be doing it. That being said, 20 years ago when I was at a company called IHS, we did engineering information standards and parts information for engineers. Our strategy then was to build what's free stuff we can give them, what stuff that we'll give them for free if they give us their email. What can we do for pay per use? How can we get them into subscription and then eventually get them into integrated workflow solutions with the content? Sort of a product-led approach, but it was, it's not too often. I think people are putting, the cart before the horse with product-led, especially in the B2B enterprise space.
Yeah, and I think it's happening to streaming services today. You think about what happened post in 2020, post COVID-19. Many people, as we were locked down, we went and turned on. People were already unsubscribing from cable services and actually subscribing to streaming services instead. Well, post COVID-19, 2020, everybody started really getting more on board and more on streaming services, and then cutting the cord to their cable services instead.
Yep.
Right. Well,
I did it.
And a lot of them developed this product-led growth model where it's all self-help and self-help support centers where very few people are available, and you don't even have a phone number to call in because you're actually chatting with a bot, or you're being referred to articles on their help center, right? Online. Well, what's happening right now, and this is the beginning of 2022, right? people are fed up and saying, hey, look, now they're looking at their bills. How much am I paying a month for all these streaming services? And they're cutting them off because they're all not by now, they're all month to month kind of plans. And there's, just like they had a huge adoption at the beginning of 2020 when the shutdown began here in US. 2 years later, people are now in millions just turning off those streaming services because we all have done as much binge watching as we can bear, and we now want to do something different, right?
And actually, I would say that goes to the value prop of why I use Apple TV, because Apple TV now has the ability. I buy Paramount Plus and other things through Apple TV, which it gives me more visibility in what I have, and it's easier for me to get rid of it. Yes. Right. So I'm using Apple TV Plus or the Apple TV as an aggregation platform, where everything that was, had been aggregated by cable TV got disaggregated, and now, we have to do stuff like that. I would argue that, I don't know how much I would call them product-led growth, just because you're doing customer support in an app or online. The product-led growth to me, if we're going for that first half, the second half I talked about, which is the viral nature of it, it's the shareability and those types of things that I think that are really the keys to it, right? I can use it. I can download it for free and use it. I can host a meeting and that type of stuff. But I can share it with Steve, and Steve can use it, and then he shares it with somebody, and and sort of like that old shampoo commercial when we were growing up, right? She tells two friends, and she tells two friends, and that's what we want to get. And I would say that just building customer support into your app or website is not really that. And to your point, it's not a good value proposition.
That's correct. And you think about like this watch parties, because that's a feature that's included in some of these streaming services. Netflix has it, Amazon Prime Video has it, and other streaming services have it. I don't know if you ever used watch party features, but
my kids have. I have not.
So if you're trying to share, your screen, and you have the subscription, you have one subscription, and you're trying to share your screen, and you want to use any kind of video conferencing application to share with family, so you can have your own watch party, there are serious issues with that because there's a lot of choppiness in doing that, right? So the watch party feature was developed with that in mind. Well, in many cases, because pretty much all the major streaming services have that watch party feature functionality that is available, it requires all viewers to have their own streaming service. And I'm going like, come on, do a bundle offering where pay-per-use model tells you can, if you want to watch a party, you want to watch one movie or one, for a certain period, you can pay by saying, I want to have one payer and invite everybody else. Have your own online theater, so to speak, and you decide, whether everybody pitches in and buys, that particular thing when you announce it or schedule it. But don't force everyone to be a user because they don't see the value of that.
Well, I think that we're gonna get to a place where providers looking for differentiation because they're not Netflix or Disney Plus.
Well, and that's what I'm saying. This is where because this is what everybody's trying to do, the same thing as Disney Plus or Apple TV. And as to your point, not everyone is a Disney Plus or an Apple TV, right? So you want to make sure that you have, in a value proposition that you're offering is actually what people want to do, because the whole point of actually being able to have a social component to streaming services means that you have to think differently about what your business model should be to allow that feature to work for everyone who wants to participate, without saying that you have to be a subscriber for the long term to that.
No, I agree. Deepro, did you have a question?
Yeah, I do. Actually, yeah, no, I do. I wanted to, when you were on the slide talking about the perceived value, and you underscore the perceived.
Yep.
For the user. So can you touch on that once more, please? Like, because we have the buyer, we got the user. Could be two different, unconnected personas in B2B space. So for the most part, from our sales team's perspective, they want to ensure that the value prop is very clear to the buyer, because that's where that's where the money is really. Sometimes there are
this one.
Yeah. So is there an education component? Because sometimes my buyer is like an engineering manager or somebody else, and my user is more in the trenches, the actual engineers. Oftentimes there is no real understanding of the value from a user's perspective and how that translates into from the buyer's perspective. This is more so, I've seen this more in my current industry, where it's the general counsel buying a product, signing the check, but the actual paralegals using it, and it's very disconnected. So I guess my question is, would you recommend more of if you see there's this gap, encourage more of marketing to step in and do some education and whatnot to kind of make sure the perception of the value is actually there is appreciation for the value?
So first and foremost, when we're talking perception of value in sales, it is always about the buyer, right? And in some cases, the buyer persona may be a user, but often they have different hats. There are features I have on my car that as a buyer, I'm like, ooh, I love the whole, glass ceiling that I can open up and I can drive through the city and see the stars. I never use it, right? The value was a buyer value. I want that check mark. It's something I never use, right? So it's always the buyer's perception. And what it comes down to, sometimes you do have to frame it for the buyer. If we know the value we create for users, I talked about the engineering content firm we worked at. And when we started, we were selling to the librarian, the engineering librarian. And their value was, I have resources on a shelf, right? It was, their view of what the value was. Once we're able to get research to show by having access to our content and tools, you could save, the engineer this much time and, extrapolate that across how many engineers use it. You could start getting to a true value. That allowed us to sort of flip this on the head and go to the, hey, what's your average cost for an engineer fully loaded? 150,000? Our research with clients has shown that we save them 5% of their time in searching for engineering reference material, be it standards or parts. How much would that, if you've got 100 engineers, this is what it would save you, right? And so sometimes we have to understand the value prop. You want it to be so they understand it, but as Drucker said, the aim of marketing is to know and understand the customer so well your product or service fits them and sells itself. And part of our job as product management is to know that better than they may. So we frame the right questions for sales and qualifying and positioning and how it may be. If you have an unsolicited buyer coming to you, that is when they may know the value prop and you've got to learn from them, right? Taking it full circle. And I know we've got to wrap up. Taking it full circle to Hector when he was doing the intro, if you have a buyer who comes and buys and is using your product and that doesn't fit your typical persona or use case, you can't tell them their value prop. You need to go learn from them their value prop. But if we're taking something to market, before we even build it, we should have an idea of what that value prop is. And that's why doing strategic positioning and value maps and that type of stuff is critical to help people do that.
Yeah, and I think it's also about understanding the real problem from the customer's point of view, because when you ask them, what exactly is the problem, is you've got to really focus on narrowing it down as to why is it a problem, how often does it happen, what is the level of pain they feel when it happens, who else is feeling that pain within the organization when something goes wrong, and all those things will give you things that will allow you to start looking at what are the great gain creators that you can build into your value proposition that you can state that your product offers to buyers and users, as well as the pain relievers that are already built in that will relieve their pain, going from a level 10 or 9 to a more bearable level like 2 or 3, so that you can actually start focusing on solving the problem. And I think the more you understand about the problem, the process of which you are building your story, or the book that Grant was referring to that builds the value proposition of your product, is to understand the problem from different perspectives of people, the stakeholders who are your buyers and your user types, segments, personas that are all using your product. And I think that process right there, it takes time. The more stakeholders there are in the way they use and the way they buy, the more that you have to go and sample the market ongoing, because things change often, and you need to make sure that you understand how the perceived value from your customers and from your users' point of view is changing for your product, even though you're continuing to build according to your vision. You don't control how the people perceive your product. You can only understand it and then figure out from there how you can actually position that pain point or those things that you're hearing, actively listening to your customers and users. You can feed it back at some point saying, well, this is how we solve that problem. If this is your problem, here's how we do it. Here's how we're different from the rest of anything else that is out there in market. So I want to thank Grant, because I think we're at time, and thank you so much, Grant, for a great discussion. And
thank you for having me.
Audience for being here as well. And Grant, hopefully we'll have a chance to maybe see you in a future session, if not later this year, sometime in the near future. And thank you so much for a great discussion. Also, send us information if you can share where we can download a copy of your map, because I think that'll be a tool that we can at least try. And let us know, and I can actually distribute that information to everyone in the audience.
I need to first put a customer segment on it.
No problem. All right. Well, thank you so much, and have a great rest of your week, everyone. And we'll be in touch. We're hoping to see you again, same time, same channel next month. Remember, we'll meet on a monthly basis. And we will be posting information about our upcoming session on our website. So you can go to productcampdc.net, and you will be announcing the upcoming topic and speaker fairly quickly in the next few days. Thank you so much, and have a great week.